Hello, everyone. Thank you for visiting my channel, Educational Norm. I work as an educational consultant, which means that I have the opportunity to interact and visit with many teachers across Ohio and beyond. Those interactions have driven me to tell their stories and their ideas on education. The goal of Educational Norm is to provide an informational network that focuses on positive aspects of education, the people preparing students for the future of our world. Join us each week for a new interview, and please subscribe and share the channel with others that you think may enjoy the program. Thank you and enjoy the show. Welcome to Educational Norm, a channel that discusses educational ideas and strategies with a positive outlook for our future of our students. I'm your host, Norm Potter, owner and founder of Structured Creativity Consulting. Today, I am here with Cris Rupp, the Director of Special Education in Blissfield, Michigan, at Blissfield Community Schools. Cris is a lifelong resident of the town where he works and has been in various roles in education in his career. He's a great educator and a better person, and I welcome Cris to the show. How you doing, Cris?
I'm good. Boy, that's quite an introduction. I appreciate that. Doing well.
Well, I had to come up with something so it makes me look professional. That's how it works around here.
Nice.
So obviously, I know you from a long time back, but could you give our audience a little bit of a background of who you are and what you do currently in your position?
Yeah, so I'm currently our Director of Special Education for Blissfield Community Schools. We're down in the southeastern corner of Michigan, not too far from Toledo, Ohio, and Ann Arbor. And so the role I'm in now, I've been in this role for 3 years. Prior to that, I was our middle school principal for 12 years. Prior to that, I was our high school assistant principal slash director of special ed slash director of transportation. So that was a fun role. I would get up and drive the snowy roads in the morning to determine whether we were having school or not, and then I'd stay late for the basketball games in the evening and supervise those. So, and everything in between. And then I taught for 3 years before that at the high school. My background or my initial undergrad teacher certification was in physical education and health education, and I ended up at Blissfield because there was a teacher shortage, kind of like there is now, in special education. So the state of Michigan at that time was allowing temporary certifications for somebody that had a teaching cert in another area to teach special education. So that's how I landed at Blissfield. And then my pathway has kind of been in the administrative leadership roles, kind of surrounding special ed all throughout.
Well, your first job there at Blissfield, well, your first administrative role, just knowing small schools, you wear many hats. And this really wasn't part of the discussion that I was planning on, but I already see what is it like? You're young, enthusiastic, you want to do whatever they throw at you, but when you're in a small school, you're asked to do pretty much anything. So, what was your mindset going in when you're like, okay, I'll do whatever you want me to do, but
Yeah, that was my mindset, kind of just whatever it takes. And it still is that way because I'm still in the same district and it's still a small district. So while I have certain titles, nothing is out of the realm of possibilities. That little tagline, my superintendent and I joke, other duties as assigned, and he doesn't have to carry the heavy hammer and force people to do things but when there's a need, we just have to address it.
and I think that is true when you grow up in that kind of situation, and you have a background in education through your family because your mom always worked in schools and your dad was on the school board. So I mean, you sort of knew that going in, but also just your family background of work and work ethic is probably a big part of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I had a lot of great examples. My grandfather actually was a teacher and principal as well. So I kind of been around the educational scene. Well, neither one of my parents were educators, specifically in the classroom. Yeah, being a part of the school and that sort of thing is always kind of what I've seen and modeled.
Well, I did not know about your grandfather. That's interesting. And
Yeah,
and your wife is also a teacher and former student of mine and coach, our
sure.
player of mine, which I'm always very proud of, just to see people get back into education. Um, and are any of your kids interested in education as well or not?
They're still sorting that out. Time is yet to tell. My oldest just graduated in the spring, and he's not, which is fine. You know, there's plenty of other things to do out there besides education, but no, and that's not going to be his pathway. But the others, we'll see. They're still in school.
That's well, time will tell, like you say. We'll soon find out. So tell me a little bit about your philosophy because you've had so many hats in your career. Tell me a little bit about your philosophy of education and what you believe, especially in the roles that you've been in.
So, first and foremost, at the risk of sounding a little cliche, I really believe that every student can learn. There's no doubt about it. Now, what they learn and how they learn it certainly is very different from student to student to student. But that's really kind of the central focus. If we don't believe that our students can learn, then it's time to move on and find a different career. Um, but I really think that, especially because my world now is in special needs. I really believe that with the proper supports and services in place, students can succeed and can exceed expectations. It's just really a matter of looking at what is it the student needs and how can we make those needs, or how can we meet those needs that really launch them into being successful.
So I think in special education, it becomes more apparent that all kids can learn, but it's really a different way of learning for a lot of kids. What are some of the struggles you have helping those kids get the supports they need to be able to flourish in the classroom?
I would say this. I would say it really takes a team effort. We have to be able to work with families. We have to be able to work with classroom teachers. Um, you know, most of my experience has not been at the K-5 level, but the last 2 years and some change has been. And so kids at that age, you know, the younger students, they don't know how to communicate. They can't tell us what their needs are. And so that's the total team effort. That's where that comes in, is just trying to figure out what is it the student wants, what is it the student needs. On a very simplistic level, as an example, my first year in the elementary building, because that's where my office now is located, but I am our K-12 director, so I am operating out of all three of our buildings on our campus, DK-12. But we had one student who was, you know, mid-morning, routinely just out of sorts, and some days were pretty big days for this student. And I can't remember the exact grade level. I think second or third grade the student was, but we found out through trial and error that something as simple as a granola bar would reset that student. And what we were finding out working with the parents, I think there was a blood sugar issue going on mid-morning between lunch and breakfast, and that kid was having either a spike or a crash. I don't really know the details, but that granola bar could have been the golden ticket. And so now when we see those trends, it's like, okay, we need to think outside the box. And is it something as simple as a hunger issue or a need, you know, a break of some sort that the kids are communicating to us without telling us, you know? It'd be a lot easier if they could say, I'm really hungry right now, but that's not the luxury we have.
Well, I'm glad you said that because one of the things that I've seen in administration as well is when we go into IEP meetings, we forget what the I stands for. You know, it's if a kid has a certain diagnosis, then I could almost tell you what the accommodations and modifications are going to be for that student just based on the diagnoses without really looking at the kid. And I've sat in where the special ed teacher forgot to eliminate the prior student's name from where they copied the information and put it onto a different IEP. So it's like bringing back the I in IEP is pretty important in understanding what's going to be successful for kids.
Absolutely. Um, there are some of those standard protocols and supports that are beneficial to lots of kids. In fact, I think our list of universal supports that we just offer to everybody is growing, which I think it's important. I think that's called a shift in education. You know, the fact very few, you know, at the younger level it still exists, but desks and rows facing the front is kind of a thing of the past in a lot of spaces. Um, and so I think that's where looking at what is it that students need, not just students who are eligible for services, but just every student, like what makes them tick. I saw a kid laying on a couch in the back of the room who looked about as disengaged from the lesson as one could possibly be. But that kid was tuned in and doing a great job with owning his learning, but the kid just needed to lay down and get comfortable because the chair wasn't doing it for him that day. And I'm sure that's happening, all over the place. But to walk in and wonder what is that boy doing back there, kind of catches you off guard. But you realize, oh, he's engaged and he's rolling. Why interfere with that? Why make that engaged student go sit over here because we said so? I don't find that necessary anymore.
I have to say that when I worked in Blissfield, I really do think the teachers care deeply about the kids, and I can't imagine that that's changed a lot. With that being said, I think that universal design is, the way to go just to accommodate as much as you can. Do you see more of a trend that way in all levels of teaching there in Blissfield, or is it just certain pockets that are doing that right now?
I think it's a real shift. I do. And it really is. Um, it really is, what the teacher level of comfort is. And that's not a bad thing because we're asking teachers to be in control of their classroom management, that sort of thing. But I think the general trend is that flexible seating, that flexible classroom. Right now, for instance, I don't know if you can tell or not, but I'm standing. I've got a stand-up desk because that's the way I roll some days. But it's how do we meet the individual needs for students and how do we keep them engaged? And if that's pacing in the back of the classroom, or if that's standing at a stand-up desk, or if that's sitting on a bouncy seat. But I see that in all three of our buildings. Now, obviously, you have to do what's age appropriate. That goes without saying. But what it looks like in different classes at different levels, I think teachers, for the most part, are willing to try those things. Um, and it has to be the right fit for the right student. You don't want to turn everybody over to everything by any stretch of the imagination.
Good point. So you mentioned communication, especially with the younger kids, is a struggle. So that brings me to something I've seen pretty consistently with the pandemic. After the pandemic, it seemed like kids have lost a little bit of that social skill aspect, especially at crucial ages that are now we're seeing, 4 years down the road. Is that something that post-pandemic that you've seen as well? And if so, how do you go about the things that you've seen, and how did you handle the whole pandemic in general coming back?
I would tell you if there was one thing that the pandemic really things really became clear to me is that we are built for community, and that interaction. And so I think students learn best in a classroom with a facilitator, teacher, having those meaningful conversations with adults and with their peers. I think that unfortunately the circumstances were what they were. They were out of our control, and we were required to do things very differently. And so I always encourage students to be in person and live. As a middle school principal, oftentimes I would have parents ask or inquire, hey, what's your thought on, my son or my daughter doesn't seem to be fitting into the traditional classroom setting. What's your thought on them going online and, doing some of that independent learning? And first off, I would tell parents of middle school students, first off, it takes the right student with the right skill set to be successful in that self-paced and self-guided learning. I mean, that really does. And very few students that I ever come across in my 12 years at that age were ready for that challenge. The other thing that I would tell parents is that they just need that interaction. They need that guided learning. They need to be able to break out into groups. They need to be able to work with students. I think there's a lot to learn inside a classroom outside of the curriculum content about how do I interact with people. While more and more jobs are being offered to work remotely, I think though still the lion's share of employment is in person. And so we have to be able to help students understand, how do I engage with people? How do I talk and respect one another? How do I have a different viewpoint? And we do that through guidance in the classroom. Now, if somebody has the opportunity to work from home, I think that transition of I've got those skills and now I'm going to go work on my own is much easier than to try and learn those skills as an adult. Like, oh, I've been on my own. Now I'm going to go engage in an on-site scenario. I think that would probably be a little bit more challenging.
I totally agree. And I think that right now I teach a college course down at Kent State, and that's an hour and a half on a Thursday night. Gets done at 5. It's a horrible time, but the kids have a great time when they're there and they learn quite a bit. And if anybody misses, I'm willing to do an online class with them. I can be done with the class because there's very little discussion in like a half hour. And I'm going, how much content is being filled by that discussion and that camaraderie that they're building as a group in that room that I just can't replicate online. It's so important.
Absolutely. Yep.
And also to your point, when you have parents asking about, is this the good thing for my kid to be online? I would think that of all kids that really need that connection, special needs kids, especially if they have ADHD or something of that nature, the online format is not suited whatsoever to be a learning environment for them.
I just had a flashback of, a classroom online during the shutdown, and, you got 20 kids, with their cameras on, and our school district required the kids to be on the camera with the camera turned on. And I mean, you mentioned ADHD. You see kids just squirming. I mean, they want to crawl out of their skin because they need that movement. They need that, and to sort of sit and focus, is just wildly challenging for some. And it doesn't change, into the adult world. I know some adults that really need to be up and moving, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's absolutely okay. But to ask kids to just sit and focus for hours on end is difficult.
Well, they say that adolescence actually, for boys especially, goes to about age 25 or 26. I think, honestly, I just came out of it a few years ago. So I think it can extend for a long period of time, and to have that as your main source is not a good thing. So after the pandemic, and now that you're back in the classroom, I think we're hitting a nice solid routine again, finally, of how kids come to school and do those types of things. It's not perfect, but we're definitely getting back to quote unquote normal. What are the best practices that you see going on right now with your school district and what teachers are doing for kids?
I think the willingness to try new things. I see some of that happening, and I think that's where teachers are. I encourage that as a principal. Like, have me in and let me see something new that you're trying, and don't worry about me dinging you on any kind of crazy evaluation or whatever if it doesn't go the way you want. And so I think some of that creativity is where it's engaging to the students too. And so I always encourage the teachers I was responsible for, try something new. Now if it goes poorly, let's not repeat it over and over and over, hoping it's going to get better. But that's a different kind of conversation. But like, if you want to try something, I'm all in on it, because you might have something that really could be excellent for some students, and really try to create that engagement process.
So what are some of the engaging lessons that you've seen, especially for special needs kids? Because I'm sure you're pretty actively involved, or what are kids responding to that might be different or not as typical as what other people have seen? Just what's going on that's good in Blissfield? Let's just go there.
Yeah. So, Norm, I would tell you that a couple of years ago, our district made a big shift to fully embraced the least restrictive environment that's called out by the federal government for our special needs students. And so all of our students now attend general ed classes. And so what I see in that is now you're probably asking for specific, tools or whatever, but what I'm seeing out of our least restrictive environment, and we're following federal guidelines on this. So this, I don't think this is just a Blissfield thing by any stretch of the imagination, but what I'm seeing is really solid growth from our special needs students in ways that, if they were in a special education classroom being taught the content, they're learning so much from their peers, and they're engaged with their peers. And so that collective time together, it's been really, really impressive. Now, that comes with some real strong challenges based on what the individual needs are of the students, like we talked about a little bit ago. But if we can put those things into place, we can see these students just do an amazing job. And it's really neat also, too, on the gen ed side, to see some emerging leadership out of some students, even at a young age. We get the kids that will partner with students who learn differently, and they're okay with that. And it's a great little leadership opportunity, and it doesn't matter the grade level. So that's been really exciting. It's been a challenge, no joke about it, but that's really been a good thing. And going into it, it was a learning curve for me as well. But boy, I tell you what, there's some exciting progress that we're witnessing. And so it's been pretty cool.
I think in that regard, it's come a long way, just because when I started teaching way back in the 90s, a lot of times I would hear teachers of general ed populations, when they had a special need kid brought in, they would say, "Oh, that's not my kid, that's your kid." And that is something that I hear once in a while now, but it's not nearly as strong as it was when I first started. It seemed like that was a bigger topic back then. So I'm glad to see that shift is being made, and it is what's right for kids. That's the big thing. So where do you see education going in the future, especially with special needs, but in classes in general?
Yeah. So I would say right now, AI has been kind of an interesting introduction. Sometimes the upper level students get kind of creative and use it to their favor, which is not exactly what the teachers are looking for. I don't think AI is going away, and I think as over my career, the onset of technology is not going away, and that's just a new tool. And so I'm really hopeful and optimistic that can become a real tool to help with growth. I think right now, because of its infancy and because its newness, there's work to be done. And I am not an expert at all in the realm of implementation with it, but I see that as, over my career, we saw the integration of the internet fully, and how we're using that, and online student learning management systems, and cell phones in every kid's pocket has come a long way, and one-to-one devices. And so the AI seems to be the next trend in education. So that's one area where I think we'll kind of continue to see that. I would say this: you mentioned teaching a class at I can't remember the school you mentioned, but where you're at. The one thing that I would hope over time with secondary, post-secondary education, teacher preparation programs, I can't stress enough the need for our new teachers to have training in special education, training in differentiation, training in the opposite of one-size-fits-all education. So I'm a special educator now many, many years, but in my phys ed and health bachelor's degree, I had one semester of adapted physical education. And I really think that was about the only thing back then that I had exposure to. Now, there might have been small little units integrated in some of my education courses. But man, I tell you what, like if every teacher ed student coming out of college had a special education degree, I would not be sad by that, because I think there's so many benefits for kids, for students, sorry, for teacher ed students to know their students, their future students are coming from all different walks of life with all different backgrounds. That hasn't changed, but the needs and the demands of the students has, I think, over time. And they've only intensified.
Totally agree. And that's one of the reasons why I actually sought out to go to college and work with some students there, because I saw the same thing. I think that if they are trained in special education and gifted both with their general ed background, I think that would be a perfect situation.
Yeah.
And gifted and special ed are very similar in how you approach kids.
I think it's that diversity in instruction.
It is, and it's that diversity. And I think the only big difference is the resources you allow those kids to use to get the content that they need. It's a little bit more reading maybe on the gifted end, and a little bit more personal video talk, that kind of thing on the other end. It's just, it's an interesting thing to think about. Um, you mentioned AI, and one of the things that I've been working on with several schools is their philosophy about testing and retakes and assessments in general. And back before we got comfortable with video and now AI, running an individualized classroom is tough. I mean, when you have a classroom of 30 and you have all these needs that are in that classroom, I can't imagine trying to create retakes over and over again for kids. But we found with AI, if you have your original test, you could plug it into AI and say, can you make another test of this with the exact same number of points, so on and so forth, same content, and it spits out a new test for you. So you could actually have unlimited tests for a unit that cover the content without ever asking the same question. It's pretty amazing what you're able to do once you delve into it a little bit more.
Yep. And that's where I see, like, over time, I think teachers are going to be exposed to it more. They're going to, to implement it right now quickly. It just takes time to learn that stuff amongst all of the other teaching responsibilities that they're going through, or they have to deal with on a daily basis. But I think over time, there's going to be a lot of benefit to that will definitely help. We have a couple of teachers that are using it, and it's like, wow, this is fantastic. It really is. And I hear people that are using it say, gosh, Cris, that would have been 5 hours on a Saturday for me to do. And it took about 57 seconds by the time I plugged it in for it to come out, and needed to review it and decide, yes, I like it. And boom, I can implement it, type of thing. So I think over time, it'll really work to our advantage. It's just a matter of getting there.
Well, and AI has improved. When I first started training AI last year at a few schools, I would run it, and it was nice. But then when I did the same thing this year over the summer, it was vastly improved in format and structure. So if you asked for a rubric in the beginning, it just gave you numbers and things of that nature. Now it provides the chart with all those boxes filled in, and it gives you suggestions on what you might want to change if it's this or that. It's pretty impressive, but I think the advantage is with kids starting to use it is they learn how to ask the right questions to get what they're looking for, which
Right.
is not, they don't ask good questions. So that's a good training piece for them to build off of.
And it wasn't too long ago, kids were trying to use Google for that. Well, let's just Google it. Well, then they would Google it, but then they wouldn't know this is a good website, this is a garbage website. Oh, this website can be modified by the user, and so I'm not going to trust it. So again, that's a great example of, yeah. I think the more students learn and are taught how to use it, it could be advantageous in that way too.
Well, I also think that as soon as you get out of the education system, it becomes legal to use. So let's teach them how to use it right. And, I encourage teachers to use it, but the year before when they are in college, you can't use it because you're cheating. I mean, let's be realistic. It's not that different.
Yeah.
So beyond the future, in general, you mentioned AI, but do you have any upcoming initiatives that you guys are looking to do in your district at this point?
So one of the things that we've really focused on in Michigan, it's called a district implementation team for school improvement. So our school improvement team, so the way our structure is right now, that might be helpful for you to understand a little bit. We have content curriculum leaders. So 6-12 meet together in a content, and then K-5 meet together, and every one of our teachers is contractually on a committee. And so from there, we have curriculum leaders, and then those leaders help work with our school improvement team. One of the things that we've really looked at over the last year is kind of creating a systems-wide process with our curriculum and vetting our curriculum. And we're looking now at power standards, we're the Blissfield Royals, so we're calling them Royal standards. I mean, the amount of standards that our teachers are expected to cover well and cover masterfully, or have our students demonstrate mastery is absurd in different content areas. And so, like, looking at what are the high expectations, high demand expectations that students learn, and then what are supporting expectations. And so trying to come up with a system. So we've done a pretty good job of that. And so I would say right now we are in the process of overhauling our curriculum and instruction. And teachers are a big part of that. They are the part of it. So that's been a good thing.
That's a big task, and I'm actually doing it with 2 schools out in Toledo, and it's not an easy task, but it's something that's definitely worthwhile. And it's interesting when you start laying it out to find the gaps and to find what the data is supporting and why the data is saying what it's saying based on what you already have. It is an ongoing process, but I don't envy going K-12. That's a big thing.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I guess, that's the luxury of being a district our size, is that we can work on it. That's the one thing. Well, so our district, we have one elementary building, DK5. We have a middle school, 6-8, and then our high school is 9-12. But we're all on the same campus, and all of our sporting facilities are on the same campus too. So we're really fortunate. So it lends itself to that DK12 scope and sequence when it comes to working on our curriculum. And we're a district of a size that we can do that too.
And I know you have some good people there that work curriculum, so you have plenty of support there. That's a good thing.
Yeah, we got a heck of a team around here, that's for sure. Teachers, they go the extra distance all the time.
So one last question that wasn't on our sheet of our pre-questions: how much contact or how much work do you do with college and career readiness for your kids, special education in particular? But do you have some good relationships with those kids to get them out in, working someplace early or anything like that going on?
Yeah, it's interesting you asked that, because our previous student services director retired at the end of last school year, and so part of my responsibilities have shifted with his retirement. And I knew that going into this position, that once he was gone, I was going to pick up some things. And so one of the things that I have spent a lot of time in is transition. And in the state of Michigan, transition refers to, post-secondary plans for students with special needs. And I got to hand it to our Lenawee Intermediate School District. They have kind of revitalized that department, and so we've really worked with them. And so right now I'm spending a lot of time with the transition council, trying to determine how can we successfully launch our students, and what opportunities are out there, and what ways can we take what their needs are with their skills and with their talents and their desires, and match them together and get them out in the world, whether it's some type of post-secondary education, whether it's some time of internship, whether it's working through the Goodwill Industries. And there are a ton of opportunities in Lenawee County through that. Goodwill is kind of the umbrella, but it's job placements outside of Goodwill altogether. So just a lot of opportunities, and so I'm just kind of scratching the surface with that. It's nice now that I have some dedicated time that I'm not splitting these roles with the principalship. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about those opportunities that are out there for our students.
Do you still have a vocational training program out in the county there?
Yep. We have the tech center, and well, I tell you what, you would, from what your remembrance of when your time was here to what it is now, it's unbelievable.
I'm
Um,
sure.
case in, case in point, I have a junior. My son is going through the welding program. He's in year one, and we met with his teacher at the fall parent teacher conferences, and he rolled out a plan. If my son is interested, or any of his students for that matter, but if he does year one and then follows it up with year two and does some additional opportunities, he'll walk out of that 2-year program with all of the coursework completed, that he would need to go to a community college and get over a 2-year program. So he'll walk out with his high school diploma and a 2-year associate's degree with 28 credits or something crazy like that. So yeah, those are the opportunities that the tech center offers, and so we're trying to plug as many kids into those opportunities as well.
Do you have a percentage of kids that go? What's the percent? Do you know?
Ooh, I'd have to talk to our high school on that. I'm not sure, but I know we send a lot of kids both morning session and afternoon session, and from there's opportunities for kids to take like coursework, like work experience, where they do a little bit of classwork and then they're out in the real world at a job. They've been placed and they're working and they're making an income too, as a senior. So I mean, the opportunities are just incredible, and that's what I hope for my own kids, but that's what I want for my students too.
Right. Well, off camera, we'll talk because I have some of those resources for you. That's something that I did as well.
Excellent.
Yeah. So I want to wrap up with this last question on what do you do to keep yourself motivated and excited about the job and just happy to go to work every day. What is that thing that you do in keeping your mental health good and your wellness in general, solid, so you're ready to go and tackle all those jobs and duties as assigned you can handle?
Yeah. So I would say first off, I feel like even though I've been in the leadership roles, I've viewed my leadership roles as a supportive role, for our teachers, for our support staff, for anybody that I get to work with, our cafeteria staff, our bus drivers. And so I enjoy supporting people. How can I help you get better at what you do? What are some of the needs that you have? How can we troubleshoot that and do that? So that's the thing that I really enjoy about my current role. What do I do to stay fresh, and what do I do? I love my family. We've got 4 kids. I got a wonderful wife. And we tend to live life to the fullest, meaning we don't sit around very much. Kids are busy in their activities, and we like to go and cheer them on and what they're doing. And then we like to travel. We like to get away. So we do some of that stuff too together. On a daily basis, it's just I got a 80-pound golden retriever that can't get enough walking in, so we like to go for walks.
That's a good thing. Yeah. Pets make you get out of your shell.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I figured the family would come in and as always, tell Renee I said hello. It's always good seeing you. Um, I'm going to wrap up the show right now, and I'd like to thank you for this time. It was a good discussion. I love always chatting with you just to see what's going on, and I wish you the best of luck. Please remember, for the people that are watching, to subscribe to this channel, Educational Norm channel. And if you have questions, please contact me at norm@normpotter.com. A little egocentric right there, but it's easy to remember. Or you can visit my website, structurecreativityconsulting.com. So have a great week. And until next time, be kind, be professional, and find solutions. Have a good night.